I turned off my sprinklers during the worst drought in 20 years to save water and follow the law. My HOA president called it an act of neighborhood sabotage. She launched a formal investigation into me. Weeks later, it wasn't my sprinklers that got shut off. It was her entire career on that board. Before we go any further, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your last chance. Hit that subscribe button now, because the next story only gets crazier from here. 3 summers ago, my state declared a level 4 drought emergency. Reservoirs were at record lows. The county sent out mandatory water restrictions, odd even watering days, no washing driveways, and for properties like mine, a full irrigation shutdown during peak heat hours. I did exactly what the county told me to do. I shut my sprinkler system off completely, let my lawn go dormant and brown, and figured that was the responsible thing to do. What I didn't expect was that my front yard, sitting brown and quiet in a sea of green, artificially watered lawns, would become the most controversial patch of grass in our entire subdivision. Because our HOA had its own rule. A rule that said every lawn must maintain a uniform green appearance at all times, drought or not. I thought common sense would win. I thought a government mandate would obviously override a homeowners association bylaw. I had no idea I was about to meet a woman who believed her laminated rulebook outranked the state of California. Let's call her Denise. Denise had been HOA president for 6 years. She had a binder, an actual 3-ring binder labeled Violations, color-coded by street. She noticed my brown lawn on day 4. By day 6, I had a bright pink notice zip tied to my mailbox. Lawn appearance violation, immediate correction required. I called her directly, explained the county drought order, even offered to forward her the official notice. She told me, and I quote, "The county doesn't run this community. The board does." I should have known right then this wasn't going to be a 5-minute conversation. This was going to be a war. Here's the thing you need to remember for later, because it comes back in a big way. Denise wasn't just enforcing a rule. She had reasons of her own for wanting my house, specifically, to look a certain way. Reasons I wouldn't understand until months later. For now, all I knew was that my brown, water-saving lawn had made me public enemy number 1 on a street where the biggest crime was usually a trash can left out 1 hour too long. 2 weeks after the first notice, I got an email that made my stomach drop. Formal investigation opened file, hashtag 2024017. Denise had convinced the board to open an official investigation into me, not just for the lawn. The letter accused me of willful neglect of property standards and conduct detrimental to community values. She started documenting everything. Photos of my yard, time-stamped, from her car. A neighbor later told me Denise had been parking across the street at odd hours, just watching my house. I want you to sit with that for a second. A woman was running a private surveillance operation over a lawn I wasn't watering because the government told me not to. I started keeping my own file. Every email, every notice, every county drought order. I didn't know yet how important that folder would become, but something told me to save everything, screenshot everything, date stamp everything. That instinct turned out to be the best decision I made in this entire saga. Because 3 weeks into the investigation, I discovered something in the HOA's own financial records, something Denise never meant for anyone to see, something that had nothing to do with my lawn at all. And that's when this stopped being about grass. Quick pause if you're just joining. Here's where we are. A woman investigated me over a brown lawn during a legal drought order, parked outside my house to photograph my property, and opened a formal disciplinary file against me. But stick with me, because what I found in the HOA's own paperwork is the reason this story ends with Denise sitting in a board meeting, watching her own neighbors vote her out in real time. This is where it gets good. Let's keep going. While gathering documents to defend myself, I requested copies of the HOA's meeting minutes and expense reports, something every homeowner has a legal right to do. Buried in a spreadsheet from 18 months earlier, I found a line item, Landscaping Consultation D. Whitfield Properties, LLC, $4,200. D. Whitfield. Denise Whitfield. Denise had quietly formed an LLC and been paid HOA funds to consult on landscaping standards, the very standards she was using to investigate me. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was profiting from a company she owned, recommending contractors, and pushing HOA business toward vendors who kicked money back to her. My brown lawn wasn't really the problem. My brown lawn was inconvenient because it drew attention to an HOA landscaping budget that had ballooned mysteriously under Denise's leadership, and an investigation into me was the perfect distraction to keep anyone from asking why. I sat with that spreadsheet for a long time. This wasn't about water conservation anymore. This was about a woman who had turned a volunteer board position into a quiet personal paycheck and used violations against ordinary homeowners to keep the spotlight off herself. I made copies. I made backups. And I requested to speak at the next open board meeting, the one where annual elections were happening in 3 weeks. The meeting room was packed. Word had spread that the Drought guy was going to speak, and half the neighborhood showed up out of curiosity. Denise opened the meeting the way she always did, calm, controlled, reading from her binder. She called my case first, listing my violations in that flat, rehearsed HOA president voice. When she finished, I asked for the floor. I read the county's drought order aloud, word for word, showing it legally superseded any HOA landscaping rule. A few nods in the crowd. Then I pulled out the spreadsheet. I read the line item. D. Whitfield Properties LLC. $4,200. Paid from HOA dues, the same dues every person in that room contributed every single month. The room went dead silent. Denise's face changed instantly. She tried to interrupt, calling it taken out of context. But I had brought copies for every board member, and for the first time people weren't looking at my lawn. They were looking at her. One board member, a retired accountant named Harold, asked her directly, "Denise, is this your company?" She didn't answer. She just closed her binder. That silence said more than any explanation could have. In a room full of people who trusted her with their monthly dues, her silence was the loudest confession of the entire meeting. The board called an emergency vote that same night to remove Denise from her position, pending a full financial audit. 6 votes to 1. Even the board member she recruited 2 years earlier voted her out. Denise stood up, gathered her binder, and walked out without saying a word, the same binder she'd used to write up half the neighborhood for crooked mailbox flags and one-day-late trash cans. The audit that followed found over $11,000 in questionable payments to companies linked to her family over 3 years. As for me, my violation file was closed within a week, with a formal note stating the drought order took legal precedence over HOA landscaping bylaws. My lawn stayed brown for the rest of that drought. Nobody said a word about it again. Because it turns out, the woman investigating my grass had a lot more explaining to do about her own paperwork than I ever did about my sprinklers. Sometimes the person pointing the loudest finger is the one with the most to hide. Denise wanted a distraction, and she got one, just not the kind she was hoping for. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that cared more about appearances than actual rules, you already know exactly how satisfying this ending felt. Tell me in the comments, would you have spoken up at that meeting, or waited for someone else to say it first? And if you liked this one, there's another HOA story even wilder than this. Go watch it next.